Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
What is up, Burn Nation? Welcome back to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. It is your hostess with the mostest, DK, Morgan and Klein, Trisha. We are here today on March 5th to really continue the journey, right? You guys have been here every week, week over week for a while now. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. We have really 2 episodes in this season of life that we're doing with the podcast. It's the HQ crew here with Trisha and Morgan. We're going to patch in Luke Smith today from headquarters, by the way, so stay tuned for that. And I'm doing a segment called Ask Devin Anything right now. So you can email any questions that you have to podcast@burnbootcamp.com. But today's storylines are amazing. I'm really excited about just the diversity that we're spreading across different topics. I'm going to go over those really quickly. We're going to hear from Brandy from Spartanburg, South Carolina on our burn transformation story today, and then we are going to get into the podcast. Make sense? Say yes?
Yes.
All right. So listen, really exciting articles and stories today. We're talking about everything from really the body to the mind, psychology to supplements to sleeping at night. Kettlebell swings are article number 1, and we're going to bring in our fitness education manager, Luke Smith, to talk about kettlebell swings and why we program them at Burn Bootcamp and why Today.com wrote an article that says kettlebell swings are one of the best full body exercises. We agree. Let's hear from Luke on that here in a little bit. And then story number 2 is why people are quitting GLP-1 drugs after 1 year. A study shows from CNBC, by the way, which is interesting that it comes from that news network. We're going to educate you on the history of these trends a little bit today here on the podcast and how they don't play out very well historically. We're going to take you on a trip down memory lane. Back into the early 1900s. I want to talk to you guys about something. I want to get your take on this too, Trisha and Morgan. Number 3 is, what does taking creatine do for a woman's body? This comes from Very Well Health. Creatine sales at Burn Nutrition are going through the roof, and we've always believed in it. I'm glad that mainstream media is catching up to it. We're going to talk about why that is. Number 4 is psychologist explains how to shut your brain up. How many people out there can't go to sleep at night because all you're doing is thinking about the problems, the worries, the replay of that interaction that didn't go too well that day? We all go through it. Inc.com has some things to say about that. We'll react to it. And then finally, and probably one of my favorite ones today because I learned something new. A psychology expert shares 8 signs that you're an ambivert. An ambivert. And if you don't know what that means, we're going to explain it to you. Extroverts, you introverts, you introverted extroverts, you extroverted introverts, and all the things in between, and why you might be an ambivert. So stick around for all 5 of these stories today. Trisha, Morgan, how did these sound to you? Producer Chelsea came to me with this lineup. She's like, here's what I found. I'm like, this is a good one this week. I'm really digging it. Trisha, what about you?
I love it. The last couple of parts, I feel like it's very well-rounded. Like, we're hitting on so many different aspects from physical to mental. I'm also learning new things. I found all of these articles very interesting.
Morgan Klein.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Definitely the first couple have me interested to speak on and just hear what the experts are saying and give our take here at Burn Bootcamp. So let's get into it.
All right. Meanwhile, we're going to hear from Brandy, Spartanburg, South Carolina. We're going to cue this video up. Brandy has an amazing story. Our very own Isaiah Hammond went down to Spartanburg, South Carolina to capture Brandy's transformation, her testimonial. Let's roll video.
The year 2023 was probably one of the hardest years of my family's life. It started with my husband, who had a massive heart attack in March of 2023. After 2 days in a coma, he woke up. That was a miracle. After that, we were like, we need a family vacation. Well, The first day, my oldest son, he started not feeling well. My son almost died 3 times while we were there. But the day that stuck out to me the most was July 5th of 2023, where I was standing right beside him and my husband was on the other side and his nurse there, and she was like, "Hey, you're leaving. I'm not gonna get to see you again, and you're being discharged in 2 days." Then she said, "Andrew, are you okay?" Right there, I looked at him and his eyes were rolling and he was fighting, but he left us. They ended up getting him back, which we were so thankful, and we praise the Lord for that. They're like, "Okay, you really are going home now." But before you go home, your parents have to do a few things. And one of those things was we had to do a CPR class. I couldn't do it. And I was like, how am I going to save Andrew if I can't even do it on this doll? I needed to get strong. So that's when I talked to my sister-in-law and I said, let's go. If I ever had to perform CPR, I can do it. I have made so many new friends. It's just family.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for sharing your story. If you're out there listening, Burn Nation, we want to hear your story. And we have a better way to get your information to us quicker. You can go to burnbootcamp.com/transformation. You can see it here if you're watching on a screen. We just ask you all the basic information, and then at the end you can upload photos, you can upload a video. We love a video if you want to share your story that way. But go to burnbootcamp.com again /transformation and submit your story to us today, and we can feature it on the podcast. The social team will be in touch with you. We just want to hear from you.
Yes, we do. We do. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And Brandy, that was amazing. And, you know, we all have a deeper reason. You know, most people think that it's just about like fitness and abs and, you know, getting strong. And like her deep reason is obviously clearly powerful. And that's what's going to allow a human being to adhere to something that's so difficult and challenging in the long term, is to have something that is more painful to lose if you didn't do it, right? And for her to think about her family being in jeopardy without her being able to be strong enough to do CPR is a powerful reason why. So what's your why? And we hope to hear that from you. Like Trish said, share your testimonial. All right, so we're going to jump into story number 1. Story number 1 today is kettlebell swings are one of the best full body exercises. Let's check out this article, first of all. And we're going to patch in our fitness education manager, Luke Smith, here in not too long. So I know he is standing by, but let's tee this up. And who loves some kettlebell swings at Burn Boot Camp, right? We've had kettlebells since not day one, because we had some dumbbells in a parking lot back in 2012, but shortly after, kettlebells became a big part of what we do. And I don't know about you two, but before we kind of get into the technical side and Luke's fitness analysis on it, practically, like when I have a kettlebell in my hand, it's that metabolic conditioning, full body. I know I'm going to work really hard. There's an association with a kettlebell that, hey, when this is in the workout, like, this is going to be a hard workout, right? It takes a lot of kinetic energy to get your hips and your shoulders and your hands in the right motion for different exercise and lifts. So kind of comments, Morgan, we'll start with you. When you think about personally using kettlebells, does it excite you? Does it scare you? What is your relationship here with this amazing piece of equipment that can shape our...
I love it. I think it is one of the more challenging movements, though, for members as a trainer in my past life. I do remember, like, that was one of the bigger ones, or the harder ones, that people had to, like, really grasp good form. So spent a lot of time on that station when it was baked into the programming. And so, but I think, like you said, Devin, it kind of hits all areas. It's a very effective move if you're doing it properly. So I love kettlebells in general. I can hold them a little bit better than I can like heavy dumbbells. So I like squatting with kettlebells. I like swinging with kettlebells. And I'm excited that we always bake them into our protocol.
Trisha, what is your relationship with kettlebells?
I also love a kettlebell swing. I love Metcon's my favorite protocol that we do at Burn Boot Camp. And whenever there is a kettlebell swing, a med ball slam, a battle rope slam, a full burpee, like, sign me up all day long. I think it's a really good for me, the progression that I can see, because it is a full body move, and I really try hard. And I think, it took me many years to get to this point where I'm at today to really make the connection, that full body connection of making sure I'm actually, hinging when I need to hinge and not using my legs, using the proper muscles to make the movement happen. To Morgan's point, it is one that it does take practice. It takes reps. You need a trainer to be there to make sure that you're doing it properly, because you don't want to injure yourself. In order to obviously progress in that weight, you want to make sure obviously you have proper form first and foremost. So I genuinely love a kettlebell swing. I think it's great for everybody.
Yeah, I know Luke Smith loves a kettlebell swing too. So we'll patch Luke in here right now, and we'll talk to him about Luke. Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, we're excited to have you in from Burn Bootcamp HQ. And as our fitness education manager, and we pride ourselves, you, myself, Matt, Jen Painter, we pride ourselves at HQ, and the rest of our trainers too. Obviously, we're representing them in our fitness programming in general. So why don't I start with you on that? Talk to me about like kettlebells inside of the fitness program. Why is it important to have kettlebells in there? What do they do for us? Why is it important to mix this in?
Well, I mean, I just think overall it's really important because we can train it several different ways. We can train it for power and we can train it for endurance. So, when you step into Burn Boot Camp, we have the red kettlebells that are super heavy. Some gyms even have ones heavier than the red kettlebells. We also have those lighter kettlebells, so we can train multiple energy systems, what I think is really important, which Trisha hit on this. That's what metabolic conditioning is. We're hitting multiple energy systems over the course of any given workout. I think from a member perspective, it's a great way to also build in the conditioning component without having to have your feet come off the ground. I know that's one thing, is if we can keep our feet in the ground and still get a good conditioning and power output, our members are going to benefit from that.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talk about keeping your feet on the ground, we do 3 strength days, 3 conditioning days, and a lot of times you tax the hip flexors if you can't find ways to, get the heart rate up on the ground. And kettlebell movements in general are great for that. Not only power and endurance, like you mentioned, but also the nature of it. A lot of the kettlebell movements, Turkish get-ups, kettlebell swings, these are all off-center mass movements as well. So you're moving this kettlebell through space and time in this way in which you have to balance it, almost offset the center of the mass of the kettlebell. So why is that important to the overall proprioception and stability of our body?
Well, I mean, it's really important. I mean, we have to train it every day when we get to burn. And one thing that Morgan touched on earlier, she always talked about this being a pain point for her and her training. I think it's important to really hit on that, because I think a lot of our members don't understand how to generate power from their hips, and they lose the ability to have proprioceptions in their arms. And a lot of our members end up wanting to front raise a kettlebell that's obviously way too heavy. So we gotta make sure we get appropriate weights in our members' hands to not only relatively challenge them, but get them to understand the movement, so they can actually feel the weights moving and knowing how to leverage their hips and then their shoulders to get the kettlebell up just a little bit higher.
Okay, so walk me through that, Doug, step by step. What kettlebell swings? How do I use my hips to generate power? What do I want to be thinking about? We talk about eating differently. We talk about training differently, but we rarely talk about thinking differently in order to train and eat differently. And so I really want people to close their eyes, like we teach all of our trainers when we're explaining our movements. We should be able to have members close their eyes, and they should only be able to hear our words and know exactly how to move their body. So why don't you do that with the kettlebell swing, just so everybody really knows the exact form and what to be thinking while they're training?
Yeah, so first thing, we'd obviously have to have that kettlebell. We want to be straddled over the kettlebell, and we don't ever just want to hinge over at the waist to pick it up. We want to make sure that we're sending the hips back and going down into what would be a traditional deadlift position. And I think really important here, we need to have our shoulders maintained behind our ears, so we have a neutral spine. Once we pick that kettlebell up, we still need to have that neutral spine posture, shoulders behind the ears. I think this is one thing that causes a lot of lower back pain, is we lose that neutral positioning. So as we have that kettlebell dangling between our legs, feet shoulder width apart, we start to hinge, and that's where we really start to generate power from. So it's going to have our hips extend where they're going backwards, like we're putting our butt on our car door to shut it if we have, kids or groceries in our hands. And as we explosively bring our hips through, that's going to allow that kettlebell to travel. And it may take you 1 or 2 reps to get the kettlebell up to shoulder height. But that's where really all that power is generated from, is the hinge. And the faster my hips can move forward from behind my body to in line with my shoulders, I'm going to generate more force to be able to get the kettlebell up in line with my shoulders in an overhand grip.
Okay, so last week, y'all, here in studio, we did kettlebell. We worked with a kettlebell in the last couple weeks. What's your favorite most recent move that you've done? Obviously, kettlebell swings are, kind of general run-of-the-mill, burn boot camp programming. What are some other things that you've done that Luke can maybe comment on as a trainer and talk about form a little bit?
Oh, you're challenging me because it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to work out.
So there's that one move that we introduced recently, which it's a kettlebell swing, but it's like it's for your core.
The coil swings?
Yeah, the coil swing.
Ooh, yeah. Luke, why don't you break down coil swings for Trisha and the rest of the audience?
So with the coil swing, this is really good for just oblique. So all the form stays the same, but as you go into alternating if I'm going to my left side, my right foot is going to be back. So we're really working that lateral rotation, be able to take the kettlebell from the left side all the way up through the middle, alternating sides. So as that kettlebell goes from right side, the opposite foot would go back. But it's really just good for working some of that rotational. And because we don't get to, throw necessarily all like med balls against the wall to work some of that explosion and power, we can do that and mimic that movement through the kettlebell.
All right. Yeah, coil swings are one of my favorite more recent moves. And yeah, that transverse rotation that really fires up that opposite side oblique. I'm excited to do more and more and more with the kettlebell. Luke, if you had to, and then I'll let you get out of here. One more question. If you had to choose one kettlebell exercise and only one, and you had to do it on repeat over and over and over and over, which one is the most beneficial and which one would you choose?
Oh, that's a good question. I was actually thinking about my favorite kettlebell exercise this morning, prepping for this article. And if it wasn't going to be the kettlebell swing, I'd probably go with the kettlebell clean to squat.
Okay.
Not because I love it the most, but because I know it's going to be the most beneficial, where I can get my upper body and my lower body engaged. And squatting may not be my favorite thing to do, but it's something that everyone should be doing. So as picking the kettlebell off the floor, cleaning it to the chin, then hitting a squat, that might be number one out of necessity.
Yeah, I agree. And I couldn't hate that one more, and I also couldn't love it more at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Luke, we appreciate you. Last words to the audience before you get off today, and we let you get back to doing your thing there at HQ. Any last words?
Stay strong, keep moving, and 2 claps on 2.
All right, you heard it from Luke.
1, 2.
Thanks, Luke. We appreciate you. Kettlebells,
Thank
a
you,
love to
guys.
hate relationship. Let's lean into the things that we, those exercises that we don't necessarily like.
Mm-hmm.
That we all have the exercises we do not like.
Mm-hmm.
I have them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they are right now. Morgan, you have any off the top of your head that you don't
100%.
like? What are they?
Any core one.
Same.
Yeah, core is definitely where I'm like, oh, because it's just challenging. But
Trisha?
I core as well, but I've yet to find that line of, because I think full burpee, no one actually loves a full burpee. I have now told myself I love a full burpee because I know it's good for me. I need to have that same thought process with core though, because I'm the same as Morgan.
And I would say pull-ups too. I love to hate them, hate to love them. One of those things, because I know how good they are, but they're the other thing I struggle with the most in the gym. Like squats and all that is, I think whatever you struggle with, you tend to, dislike and try to avoid, when really you need to be focusing on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share something with everybody today that what I think is probably the most important advice I could give you as a trainer, or one of the most important pieces of advice. And this often is overlooked as a benefit of having a trainer, is that you actually train the muscle groups and the movement patterns that you don't intrinsically enjoy training. Quick story, Morgan and I on vacation in Mexico. We're staying at a hotel. It's the All-Star break NBA weekend. Vanderbilt from the Lakers walks in, and he's staying there for a couple days. He didn't make the All-Star team. We're working out with him in the gym. He's doing his own thing. We're leaving him alone, but I know who he is. And he's on a bench, and he's, by the way, one of the best athletes in the world. And he is doing side plank raises with a foot, the medial part of his ankle suspended up on a flat bench, and he's holding a plank for his right side adductor. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that is something that most of us, if we just go into the gym and we're unplanned, if we're just exercising, we're unhinged, unplanned, we're never ever going to do that movement. This is why you need a training regimen. This is why you need to train protocol, programming, periodization, progressive overload, being able to get the stability muscles that really help keep your body upright and posture good in the long term, and that you don't get any like global asymmetry or overload on one muscle group. So it was a reminder for me when Morgan and I were on vacation that the professional athletes, because I'm 10 or 12 years removed from that type of regimen, but I remember it very freshly. They do the things that they don't intrinsically enjoy doing because it's what's best for their performance. Okay? So don't forget that, everyone. Show up and lean into the things that you don't necessarily love. Article number 2 today, it talks about why people are quitting GLP-1 drugs after a year. Do you guys get a chance to read this article?
Yes.
All right, Morgan, why don't you break down what you hear here, what you've read here, and let's get into a conversation because I think it's an important one.
Okay, yeah, and I think we have a video too.
Mm-hmm. We do have a video. Let's discuss the article, and then we'll play the clip and we'll react to it all.
Yeah, I mean, the article basically outlines a study. So the link is also study. The study was done January 31st, 2025. And it basically talks about most people quit a highly popular class weight of drugs called GLP-1s within a year of starting them. It cites that several studies have shown this, but there's a couple reasons why. One being that they did lose the weight and they've kind of done what the drug was supposed to do and they're ready to get off it. Number 2 reason was side effects, nausea, stomach pain, GI issues, I believe it was. And then number 3 was financial. These run about $1,000 per month before insurance and any other rebates that you may get. So, I think obviously it's a part of the conversation of the rise of GLP-1s, and we're seeing it in the fitness industry. We're seeing brands, attach themselves to medical weight loss. And, I think it's interesting to see how people are coming off of it. I think it was 60% of people that came off of it within a year were ones that were on it that were non-diabetic related. 40% went off of it because probably the side effects, even though they had diabetes and obviously need to take that drug, they're trying something different. Mm-hmm. So, to be honest, this article and this study makes sense to me. I think it's the wave of this type of stuff. You see people all get on it, not all. You see people get on it, try it, and whether it does what it's supposed to do, you lose the weight and you're like, okay, I'm at a good weight now. Now I'm going to get off it and I'm going to work on maintaining this weight. Or, they didn't feel good and the risk and reward wasn't worth it. So,
Trisha, your take.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job summarizing it. Another part that I thought was interesting is people, and I think that there's a space and time if obviously if you have type 2 diabetes and this is what you're using it for, or if you are using it to lose weight, to kickstart your health journey, whatever you need to do, like that's your own prerogative. Part of this study that they did was people were more likely to get back on GLP-1s if once they got off, they regained the weight, which, I think that's where my struggle is I just want people to figure out lifelong process for them to keep weight off or whatever their end goal is. I think that's where it kind of makes me a little bit sad is they went back to it even though it didn't work the first time. I think, what I want the education to be is if you're on the GLP-1 to lose weight, obviously if you're outside of the space of those who need it for type 2 diabetes treatment, to make sure that you're also doing things to educate yourself on how to, when you do come off of the GLP-1s, you don't have to continue to get back on it and spend all of that money, because it is really expensive if you think about how much you're spending over time on this, to make those small adjustments to your lifelong goals, so that way, you know, you can set yourself up for success long term.
Well, so,
Yeah, I think that's a good. I just think that's a good point. You know, we have members at Burn Boot Camp that are on these GLP-1s, but they're still coming. They're learning. You know, they're creating habits that are still healthy, and the GLP-1s are there to assist the weight loss. And you know, my hope would be that they can get off of them, maintain those healthy habits, keep the weight off. You know, build the strength, build the muscle, and then not have to go back on something like that. But you know, that's probably not the case for everybody, which is why you see that vicious cycle.
Yep.
Yeah, and we have some clips that we want to show. The first one is from a doctor named Tony Hampton of the Advocate Healthcare in Chicago. He's talking about the side effects of GLP-1, and we want to react to that. So we'll show that first, and then we're going to jump over to a Huberman clip. He is on the Lex Friedman podcast, or the Artificial Intelligence podcast, formerly known as. And those two are good friends, and they'll talk a little bit about GLP-1 as a supplement, and then we'll react to that. So let's go ahead and roll Dr. Tony Hampton's clip, and let's hear what he has to say about the side effects of GLP-1.
With GLP-1s, number one, financial. Many people in my practice on the south side of Chicago, they simply can't afford it. Even if their insurance covers it, sometimes the copays are prohibitive. 80% of the people who do it and get off of it will regain the weight, 80%. And then, but there are other side effects, pancreatitis, intestinal obstruction. I've actually had people have a gastric obstruction because of the medicine, which is very concerning. Thyroid cancer, that's another one. Gastrointestinal side effects like nausea, vomiting. Believe it or not, it affects your eyes. The same diseases that diabetes cause, and we're using this medicine to treat that, it can cause retinopathy and something called macular edema. I mean, the same, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this is obviously, somebody who is a doctor who is studying these things, and, could very easily be on, which most doctors are, is being on the side of like promoting GLP-1 as the miracle drug, like no matter what. But I think what he's saying, and I'll let you guys react to this before we go to the humor one, what he's saying to me is that this is a really expensive Band-Aid to, 80% of people will get off and regain the weight, right? Even if they do stop it after a year, they're getting off and then regaining it. It's $1,000 a month. It's got all these, all these side effects that, like, anything that, to me, just logical. It's anything that you have to take outside of your body, put through a needle, inject into your body, that can make you sick is not a foundational element to health. I mean, and you like go back, and you look at like the last 100 years or so, and I actually went and did some research, and these things like don't play out well when you have non-foundational, meaning like eat well, train and exercise a lot, like, and then try to do your best to like develop a better mindset. Like if you're not doing those fundamental things and recovering well, then, and I think Huberman kind of is in the middle of the road on this. So I'll take it. I think I will be more, how would you say, decisive than him in terms of like, I study history to look at trends. And when you see things like the tapeworm diet of the 1900s, I'll explain what that is in a second, the cigarette diet of the 1920s, the cabbage soup diet of the 1950s. I mean, these things, you look back and you say the tapeworm diet was actually a tapeworm that people would swallow, and they'd let the eggs of the tapeworm, and they'd let it sit and consume inside their intestines, like thinking that it's consuming their food, leading to weight loss. It's like, it's dangerous and disgusting and like didn't play out well, right? Like this is something outside coming in that's supposed to fix the entire day. The cigarette diet, we're not old enough to realize. You have to go back and Google these ads, because tobacco companies, you can remember the company Lucky Strike. You guys remember Lucky Strike? Yeah. We never saw it, but it was around. These cigarettes were promoted as appetite suppressant and actually like a weight loss strategy. Like smoke these cigarettes and you're gonna lose weight. Reach for a Lucky instead of a sweet was the campaign. And so, this nicotine that kept people thin But like the side effects was that this thing you're putting in your body made you way more sick than what it actually was solving. And then you go into like, and then I think we started to get more and more and more, less and less ridiculous as a society over the long run. And it's kind of flipped into, now these strategies are like scientifically like top of the line. And if you're taking these, then you're like living the premier lifestyle. And it's a sign of wealth and luxury, and it's like it's flipped into this thing where you're almost, if you go against it, you're almost looked at like, why would you ever go against that? Well, it's because it's never worked. That's why I would go against it. It's because it's never worked. And it's not like I'm against it. I'm just against the fact that people use it without changing the fundamental underlying behaviors and not changing the set of their mind, not changing their belief systems. And this is why 80% of people that get off it will regain the weight, because they never changed any underlying fundamental ritual or behavior that led to the weight gain in the first place. And so it's like we got to stop looking outside of our body, outside of ourselves, to find solutions that are going to make our life a happier and better place. There's only one way to do that, and one person who can do that. That's you. And the four walls of your mind. You think differently, you start to eat differently, you start to train differently. And if you think that a GLP-1 is going to come in and save the day, then you're going to be just another one of these statistics that sit on the other side. And I hope that's not offensive, because I don't want to be offensive, because I love you guys so much that I just want to tell you what I think to be the truth and what I believe. And if I don't lay it out decisively, I don't have anything to sell you. I don't have, I want to give you what I think is the best long-term advice, which is eat well, train often, recover intelligently, repeat that, and be consistent with those things. And you don't need anything else. Anything else on top of that you'd like to try is only an experiment to get you that extra little tiny edge, like maybe a bodybuilder or something like that using it. So that's my take on it.
I have something to add before we go to the Huberman thing. I've been really trying to figure out why, my thought process on GLP-1 and really what about it kind of bothers me. And I don't like quick fixes, but I think there's also a space, like I said before, where if you need that to kickstart your journey. But I think what a lot of us aren't talking about, and someone who has battled like disordered eating and body image appearance, and that's going to, I think, unfold through all of this, because I know a lot of people that are on this, so losing weight really, really fast, because it is that quick fix. It is going to mess with us at least me. It has messed with me, with my friends that are on it, knowing like they're going to hit their weight loss goals a lot faster than I am, because I'm trying to do it the right way. And here they are, they're going to show up in swimsuit season feeling all confident because they lost 10 pounds in whatever a month. And so I think that that's also something we're not talking about, is the disordered eating, the bad mental strains that it puts on everybody. Even if you're on it, I can only imagine, because then you get off of it and you're like, oh shoot, now I can't eat, because the whole point of the drug is it decreases your appetite, right? So I just also think that that's something that in these articles we're not talking about, is what's going to happen to all of us, whether again you're on it or not, from a mental perspective when it comes to disordered eating, because that is such a big disease and something that a lot of us are working really, really hard to overcome.
Or what's going to happen to the woman that's on it, lost a ton of weight, got to a unrealistic body weight potentially, and then gets off it, gains weight. That's going to mess with them as well. You know? So
do you think it's worth it to talk about BMR, like basal metabolic rate, and the muscle mass, and how important it is to gain muscle in this conversation? Because that's the third side effect, is muscle loss, right? And so just quickly, as we gain muscle, our basal metabolic rate goes up. The more calories that we're going to burn at rest, the more muscle mass that we have, and thus our body becomes a calorie burning machine. The inverse of that is also true, that less mass you have, the less calories you're going to burn, and you're not going to be a calorie burning machine. And so if you're focused on building muscle, this is the way to keep weight loss off long term. Yes, it might be a little less gratifying in the short run from now until spring, but when has anything in your life been worth it if it's fast? Like, think about that. If you can go out and do something, really fast, and you can not put the work in, and you can shortcut or short circuit thing, when has that ever been worth it? Don't you always end up regretting taking the easy road? Because a man named Jim Rohn, who's a father of philosophy, said that in personal development, said that if you take the easy road, life will be hard, but if you take the hard road, life will be easy. And so it's just another way to say short-term gratification, long-term satisfaction. And can you have both is the real question. And it seems like probably not. It seems like you need to understand that that longevity is the main outcome, not abs for this spring. Longevity is the main outcome, and we need to then work backwards and incorporate behaviors into our life that align with long-term strategy. Y'all feel me on that out there, Bird Nation? Let's do that. Roll that Huberman clip. I wanted you guys to see this.
Also, one of the most controversial topics nowadays is Ozempic, Mounjaro. I'm very middle of the road on this. I don't understand why the quote unquote health wellness community is so against these things. I also don't understand why they have to be looked at as the only route. For some people, they've really helped them lose weight. And yes, there can be some muscle loss and other lean body loss, but that can be offset with resistance training. They've helped a lot of people. And other people are like, no, this stuff is terrible. I think the most interesting thing about Ozempic, Mounjaro is that they are GLP-1. They're in the GLP-1 pathway, glucagon-like peptide 1. And it was discovered in Gila monsters, which is a lizard, basically. And now the entomologist will dive on me. It's a big lizard-looking thing that doesn't eat very often. And they figured out that there's this peptide that allows it to curb its own appetite at the level of the brain and the gut. And it has a lot of sequence homology to what we now call GLP-1. So I love anytime there's animal biology links to cool human biology, links to a drug that's powerful that can help people with obesity and type 2 diabetes. And there's evidence that can even curb some addictions. Those are newer data. But I don't see it as either or. In fact, I've been a little bit disappointed at the way that the whatever you want to call it, health wellness biohacking community has like slammed on Ozempic, Mounjaro. It's like they're like, just get out and run and do. Listen, there are people who are carrying substantial amounts of weight that running could injure them. They get on these drugs and they can improve, and then hopefully they're also doing resistance training and eating better, and then you're bringing all the elements together. Well,
I would say I tend to mostly agree with what he's saying. However, I think there is a group of people that are on these drugs that don't have a ton of weight to lose. Yeah. And that's where I think that's why the health and wellness industry maybe hasn't been as welcoming to it, because it is being used as a quick fix versus like a life-saving weight loss option. Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, the people that do need it, that are obese and can't quite to get the weight off quick enough, they're getting lumped into the entire group. So.
Yeah, he takes an outlying example and says, "Hey, this person that would get injured running." Yeah. Which not many people are in the weight category that they would get injured if they just simply went out and ran. So that's you're taking like a small percentage of the population and then pasting that over everybody and saying, I don't understand why health and fitness, the industry in general doesn't get this because of this one outlier situation. Well, we all get that, right? To Morgan's point, that's not practically what's happening. That's not the market for Ozempic. The market for Ozempic, can we put it out there? It's the number one market for Ozempic is wealthy women who want to lose weight fast. That's the number one market. And there's obviously a ton of other people, but you're getting, and we see this because we live, our organization lives to serve all women. And so we're seeing this subset of our population, and I don't have anything against it. I'm not saying that I'm against it, other than that it's that it's in the conversation as part of something that should be foundational. Like, no, it shouldn't be anything that you have to take from a lizard and put into a human, to me, isn't like foundational human biology. But I'm not a scientist, and I love Andrew Huberman, so maybe he's right. But at least we're talking about this and putting it on the table and being able to have a conversation that sees it from all angles. Trisha, anything else on that topic before we move on?
No, I think that's you, Morgan. You hit the nail on the head, and Devin, so did you. I think that the biggest thing that I just want to, for anyone who else is feeling the same way I am, is it does put us in a hard mental spot. So I think if you need it, use it for what you need, but make choices based off of your lifelong goals. That's really all that it is, simply put.
Very well, health. What does creatine do for a woman's body? Which, let me just tee this up real quick. Do you guys want to take a crack at why this is even a headline in the first place? I got some thoughts around, like, how did we get to a point where this is a headline?
Well, I think creatine is making a comeback.
It is.
So I think it is a hot supplement right now, and that's an exciting thing for us because, you know, we have our own product. We believe that it has a lot of benefits, especially for women, and we're starting to debunk the old view that people had on creatine, which is that it's going to make you bulky. And so I'm here for it. I'm ready to talk about it.
Trisha.
Yeah, no, same. I think that, you know, we talk about it from a performance perspective. Obviously, there's a lot in here about that, but it's also what does it do for you lifelong, right? And that's what we're all about, is making choices and supplementing your body in the way that's going to help you long term. And that's exactly what creatine does. So I'm here for it as well.
Okay, so let's go through this article real quick, because most of you are viewing, I hope, but a lot of you are listening. So let's just go through this list real quick. We know we love our lists here, okay? Number one, as to a reasoning of why women take creatine, number one is to support hormonal transitions. Routes shifts in the sex hormones estrogen and progesterone can impact fluctuating creatine levels. Okay. Number two, improves exercise performance. They just hit the nail on the head with that one. Creatine is an ingredient in many sports nutrition supplements. You know, and while we're on this one, to me, like, because I don't want to leave the GLP-1 topic, like thinking that we're demonizing it or hating on it, all we're saying is that creatine, collagen, you know, supplements, like GLP-1's basically just a supplement. It's basically something that like creatine isn't going to change your life. You know, if you're severely overweight or underweight, like just it's eat whole food, it's train hard, it's recover intelligently, and repeat that. And once we're doing all those things, you know, then, you know, let's make sure that we're adding creatine into our supplement. Okay, that's going to help you get to the next level in strength if you've plateaued in your strength. So improves exercise performance. That's the biggest one for me. Helps build muscle and reduce fat. I think that's a byproduct of helping increase performance. Boosts mood and cognitive function. Improves bone mineral density. Number 6, curbs the effects of short-term sleep deprivation. And so we've got some recommendations with our creatine. We all use it. I'm on the panel here. So my personal story of creatine is I started taking it in high school, and it helped me gain 25 pounds. That weight helped me throw the baseball harder. I ended up getting a scholarship where I continued to weight train. I continued to take supplements, creatine, whey protein, mostly weight gainer. I took a lot of weight gainer back then, and gained another 20 pounds, and then ended up signing a professional baseball contract. So I've got a very fond relationship with creatine and supplementation, and it's helped me really explode my life. You know, it didn't put me on the field, and it didn't, you know, make me do the drills, and it was a supplement to being a good baseball player. But I'll tell you what, I give a lot of credit to my strength training days of gaining all that weight. The more mass that you have on your body, the faster the ball will go as a pitcher. Physics. So I love it. I love creatine. I can't go a day without it. Morgan, I know that I always see you're always scooping some creatine. Have you noticed your strength gains? Like, what on this list have you noticed personally?
Yes, I would say definitely going back to our list. I don't know if I've seen a ton of hormonal change, but definitely improves exercise performance. My recovery felt better, and then I felt like I was stronger and fuller, like I could just lift more weights. But then I believe strongly in the mood and cognitive function, so I think that is, I would say, the number 3 thing I've noticed. I don't have trouble sleeping, so that's not something that's been an issue for me. And then I think it's hard for us to see bone loss without specific tests. So, have
you seen any strength gains, Trisha? I know that when we first rolled out our creatine, were you new to it at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I first started taking it when we first launched it. I think I actually got like my hands on a
sample
canister before it launched, and so I started taking it. And at that time, you know, I think I've shared my journey. I've been really focused on my strength training. Specifically last year, I got really, really into it, being more intentional. And pull-ups has always been something that I've always struggled with. And there was something that I started taking creatine. Obviously, you can't take creatine and then just all of a sudden like do more pull-ups. Like I was also going to the gym, being more intentional with what I was doing. But I went from being able to do 1 unassisted pull-up to 6 unassisted pull-ups within the matter of like 4 to 6 weeks. But I had been taking creatine for like a month or 2 before then. So I definitely have seen strength improvements since I've been taking it, and I think faster strength improvements. Recovery I've noticed is a lot better for me. And then I also agree with the mood and the cognitive. I don't know if since reading that, it's more of a placebo that I'm like, oh, I can think more clearly because I took my creatine today. But I do feel like because there's days that I've missed it a couple days in a row, and then I'll take it again. And I'm like, oh no, I definitely feel like this helps me in that aspect. So I think my list would be very similar to Morgan's. And then I will say, I also when I first got on it, I experienced a little bit of bloating for like, I don't know, a couple of days. But after that, there's zero. Like I don't notice that from my body perspective. I don't notice anything different. I didn't like gain a bunch of weight or anything like that.
So yeah, Dr. Peter Attia has a podcast, and he has Lane Norton on. And I know Matt Morris, our VP of Fitness, is a big fan of Lane Norton. I don't know if you've heard of Lane Norton, but he's got some interesting takes and seems to have a lot of science-based kind of nutrition, fitness, exercise advice. So let's go ahead and roll that YouTube video, that Dr. Peter Attia podcast with Lane Norton.
Actually, let's talk a little bit more about creatine. We talked about it really briefly on one of our podcasts, but we were kind of at the end. So I want to kind of go back and make sure people understand that it's one of the supplements we get the most questions about. It's also one of the supplements that we feel the most confident telling patients, like, if, this is a supplement worth taking. It's clearly passed test number 1, which is it's safe. And it passes test number 2, which is it's probably got efficacy. Well, I shouldn't say it. It's got efficacy. The real question is, are you okay with a little bit of weight gain? Because that's, you're going to pull more water in. So explain to people a little bit about why creatine is so important. And presumably this is something that's really important in powerlifting. I'm guessing going into a bodybuilding meet, you probably don't want creatine for that extra weight, or do you?
So I think it's actually great for bodybuilding.
Okay, great. I want to hear about it, because I assumed you'd have a little more water, but maybe the water's all in the muscle and that's where you want it.
Yeah. So creatine is a high energy phosphate donor. So in muscle, it exists as phosphocreatine. And when you take supplemental creatine, it'll come into the muscle, it'll get a phosphate attached to it, phosphocreatine. And originally the only mechanism we thought of was, well, it's a high energy phosphate donor, so people will perform better. But then we saw people increase their lean body mass, increase their strength, and there's even like benefits in terms of cognitive benefits appear to be pretty clear that there's some cognitive benefits as well. So as you mentioned, like in terms of safety and efficacy data, I mean, to me,
there's no strikes really.
I tell people, I'm like, I don't even know why we're having this conversation anymore. And it's also, it's gone up in price a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good take. Like, I don't even know why we're having this conversation anymore, is what he said. And I think what he really means is that it should be so obvious to everyone that we should be taking it. And why is it not obvious, especially that women should take it? Kind of back to what I asked you, like, why is this article even here in the first place? Well, we've talked about this before on the podcast, and this, I think all the ladies out there should really listen up, because it was kind of shocking to me when I first learned about this, as we were studying creatine and looking for doctors in the area that could really come in and be a mouthpiece for it here at Burn Boot Camp to support it, like Lane Norton and Dr. Peter Attia are. And what we found was that the standards for studying biology in general, but supplements specifically, there weren't even 2 genders until like the early 1990s. So like all of the nutritional biology studies were done on the male biology, and so in genome. And so at the end of the day, it's like, well, why is this question getting asked about women? It's because women weren't even studied in terms of biology until the early 90s, and then creatine wasn't even a part of that whole narrative in the scientific community until like the mid to late 90s. And so, I mean, we're not far removed. I remember the late 90s. You guys remember the late, where were you during Y2K? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we remember the late 90s. This was not that long ago. And now here we are 20-something years later, and creatine is now, still, it's like, it's highly debated when it shouldn't be. And I think that's because, especially in the world of all of our ladies out there, we got to a late jump on studying it. And then the late jump came with all these myths and misnomers about women taking creatine and it gaining too much muscle and holding water and all the negative side effects that you hear from it. But I'm on the side of Norton here of like, hey, this is something that should be run of the mill every day, 5 milligrams, with your protein shake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. And I think that that's also, I hear living in the fitness space and wanting to educate myself about health and fitness, and then you hear all these myths. I love being able to point people back to research and be like, okay, you can believe that if you want, but the data actually says this. So I love that women are now being focal points, because we've known this research all along, to Lane's point, but now we can at least specifically say, so for any female out there that thinks they're going to gain weight or XYZ is going to happen if they take creatine, actually no, it's going to benefit you in better ways, so you should take it.
Rhonda Patrick has something more to say on this. Let's roll that video.
Creatine work, it does play a really important role in how our muscles produce energy. Inside of our muscles, creatine is transformed into phosphocreatine through the action of an enzyme called creatine kinase, which, by the way, requires magnesium to function. So phosphocreatine is a key player in the production of ATP. This is the primary source of energy in most all of our cells, particularly during high-intensity, short-duration exercise or long-duration endurance exercise as well. Supplementing with creatine can sort of supercharge this whole energy production process. It boosts our muscles' capacity to produce ATP. It enhances energy available, particularly under intense, anaerobic activities. This increase in available energy can lead to improved muscle power. It can, help performance as well. These enhancements can lead to, even gains in muscle performance and growth. So
largely in general agreeing with each other. That's what I hear from these clips, and it's pretty much game over. Creatine's here to stay. All women, all men, all people should be supplementing with creatine if you already have a solid foundation of eating well, training hard, recovering. Add this in, and it's going to change the game for you potentially. It won't happen overnight, but over a year period, if you're consistent with it, you'll really start to see some of the benefits everybody is talking about here. Morgan, any last words?
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that for women, the recommended dosage is 3 to 5 grams per day. So if you're just starting out, I would maybe go on the lower end of that.
We always recommend 5 milligrams per day. Yep. So one scoop of.
Yeah, our scoop, if you have a Burn Boot Camp creatine, our scooper is 5. But again, if you wanted to kind of taper your way up into that, 3 to 5 every day. It's got to be consistent. It's not one of those supplements that you can just take here and there. So that's important. Make sure you're drinking a lot of water, because some of the side effects could be dehydration. And so you can combat that with a lot of water, Also, upset stomach is something I've heard of as a side effect. Again, anytime you're trying something new, it's just important to recognize it takes a little bit of time for your body to adapt. But it's safe. It doesn't mean your body's rejecting it if you are having some of those side effects. And then we have to say this because it's not studied, but if you're pregnant, you should definitely ask your doctor. I have heard from scientists that it's safe during, your pregnancy. But again, since women are just kind of coming into the space where we're being studied, pregnant women are still yet to really have a lot of studies when it comes to supplementation. So that is why that label is also on our Burn Boot Camp creatine. You can buy it online.
Yep.
I'll plug us right there, online or in gyms.
Okay, great point. A psychologist explains how to shut your brain up so you can finally get some sleep. Anybody have trouble with this at home? Anybody, you guys have trouble with this? You have that turning machine that just keeps going, the idea factory, it never turns off. A psychologist explains how to shut your brain up so you can finally get some sleep. Too much is sometimes going on at work. Sometimes it's a lot in the family. Sometimes your kid got in trouble at school today. You're thinking about, what a terrible parent I am. And you start worrying about things that never come true anyways. And this never-ending cycle that some of us have, all of us at some point have, especially at nighttime. That's when it seems to go for me. Formerly, though, I think this is part of, we're going to hear from Dr. Andrew Weil on this too, discussing this, but when you read the article and you go through this, a lot of the tactics are really just about controlling your breath. It's really just about like slowing down intentionally, breath work, meditating, taking your mind off of whatever it is that's occupying you. If you allow your mind to just be this free roaming entity that just has the unlimited hall pass to worry about everything all the time, well, it will. And what we need to do is realize that when this worry train starts to really impact our life in a way that I'm anticipating the future, therefore in the present I'm not able to keep my feet on the ground. That's called anxiety in a lot of psychological circles. You're anticipating the worst outcome in the future, but it's also the most unlikely outcome in the future. You follow what I'm saying? And so that produces a lot of worry. And what does worry do? Well, worry is going to increase your levels of stress. Well, what is recovery? We're talking about eat, train, recover. It's like, well, your stress levels, have look at like a president of the United States or somebody that goes into like a highly stressful job. 4 years later, they look like they aged 10 years because stress can literally can age you, and it can take you out of homeostasis. And so the psychologist here is really just talking about breath work, is really just talking about mindfulness. What do people mean when they say mindfulness? Do you guys ever get those buzzwords? Mindfulness is one to me that like people will throw around in good intention, but not actually know what it means to be mindful. Like if I say define mindfulness, they're like, well, it's to just like have happier thoughts. So it's like, no, that's the outcome of mindfulness. What is mindfulness to
me
you guys?
Is like being intentional.
Okay, elaborate. Intentionality, Morgan Klein says. Further define that.
I just think if you're mindful of stuff, then you have good like social awareness, self-awareness of like what's happening around you, and then you're intentional about your next actions and your next thoughts and what you're doing. So I don't know, those two words
I heard intentional thoughts, inner, outer. Now we're starting to break it down. So you're saying intentional.
You write my notes down over there.
Yep. You're saying intentionality, both in the outer world, kind of like in the way that you're showing up socially, but also in the inner world in the way that you communicate with yourself, and then applying, and that's social and self-awareness. Okay, so it starts there, intentionality.
Yeah. What
do we need to be intentional about when it comes to ourselves? Because isn't it true that we need to connect with ourselves before we can connect with others? Is that true? I don't know. That's not a rhetorical question. I'm just asking. Do you believe that you have trouble connecting with other humans if you can't connect with yourself first?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going through life with just kind of letting things happen and then you're not responsive properly, then it could put you in a different mental state, which then you're losing sleep and you're thinking about things, and ultimately you're kind of letting your thoughts win versus being intentional and telling yourself the truth and so yeah, I don't know necessarily. I didn't know we were going to go down this path, Devin, but I think mindfulness, yes, it is a buzzword, but I do think there's meaning behind it, and there's actual action that can be taken when you're mindful of how you are thinking and acting and believing.
Trisha, what's mindfulness mean to you? Or is there any other words that...
Well, I think it's a layer of emotional intelligence. And I think a lot of, I'm reading a book right now about just different strategies for having, self-awareness. And you can say you have self-awareness, but I think it's the same thing as mindfulness, is you have to be able to have the strategies in place to be proactive, and it can't be a reactive state. So you have to be proactive with your mindfulness depending on what you're going to get yourself into. And I think this article hits on it. I think it's article or the clip where if going into going to bed at night, you need to be proactively helping yourself along the way, and not when you hit the sheets realize I can't shut my brain off. What are you doing in advance of going to sleep to set yourself up for success. Just like if you're going into a stressful meeting, what are you doing proactively to make sure you have, your breathing treatments? A lot of the things that, a lot of the tips that they give here is the same for if you're in a stressful situation. It's calming your mind down, but you can't do that unless you're proactive about it. So I don't know, it's a lot of words to say that I think a lot of it's just also having that level of emotional intelligence as well.
Yes. I love it. I love it because what we're doing is we're defining mindfulness. And once you have the definition of it, right, it's like mindfulness is your ability to recognize when you're in the future and you should be in the present. It's actually, let me take that one step further. It's the awareness of recognizing when you're worrying in the present about something that is the most unlikely outcome in the future. That's more specific. Because we do this, don't we? We will, for days on days on days, we'll stress ourselves out. Let's use public speaking, because everybody can relate to this at some point. Days on days on days, you'll stress yourself out about needing to nail every word when you get up there and speak in front of the PTA or, I don't know, one of us at a conference or something. For days on end, you'll worry about the worst outcome, right? Of you just absolutely bombing, and it consumes your thoughts day, morning, and night. You're thinking about it when you're going to sleep at night. That's good and bad, right? But a lot of times we don't take that balance with it, and we just put all this, I call it the worry threshold, right? It's where you put so much worry on yourself that it becomes unnecessary it's too much worry for the specific thing that you're about to encounter. So instead of saying for 4 days before a public speech, saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna nail it, I'm gonna bomb it," it's gonna, and thinking that way, yeah, you could use that for motivation. You could use that to say, okay, I'm going to tighten up every word. But that's kind of playing not to lose, right? That's a negative perspective on something that doesn't need to have a negative perspective. It's like, hey, no matter what, I'm going to study. This is the positive mindset. No, I'm going to study this. I'm going to know every word for the next 4 days. I'm going to learn this so well that when I get on that stage, I can completely black out, and even my worst failure is going to seem like the best performance on stage because I was prepared so well. Mm-hmm. That's the difference between being in the future and being in the present. It's not going to change the outcome probably either way, right? You're probably still going to get up there and perform the way you would perform regardless. It's just your perspective, right? Do I have to spend the next 4 days worrying about blowing up or bombing on stage when 99.999% chance that's not going to happen anyway? Mm-hmm. So that to me is what is the place where you can stop in your daily life. This is the practical way to mindfulness to me is, what am I worried about? What is the most likely outcome of what I'm worried about? And am I past this worry threshold? Because there's the other side of it. Nothing's absolute, right? Too much worry is obviously at a very extreme anxiety and paralysis. But then not enough worry is laissez-faire, I don't care, and now you don't get anything done. There's no such thing as absolute in this world. You have to have just a logical, common sense approach to it, and and just know that when you prepare, the outcome is in the preparation. So prepare hard. The future will take care of itself, and there's no sense in sitting here for 4 days worrying about it, stressing yourself out, and getting gray hairs when you're 30s or your 40s. Mm-hmm.
Can I share something that I think is funny? So when I was reading this article, some of the tips, I'm not going to lie, are the same tips that I do when I'm, I think we're going to get into the video next, which explains the cognitive shuffling. But I do these same things. I'm singing a wall sit in camp. I distract my mind. And so I was like, oh, this makes sense. So I don't know if we're going to get into that video, but I thought it was really interesting. So it's also tips for all y'all Burn Boot Camp people out there. You can take this to your next wall sit, and it will help distract you. Maybe you can get a couple of seconds on your wall sit, too.
Let's roll that video so we can see what Trisha's talking about. Here is a video by Dr. Shelby Harris discussing cognitive shuffling for your next wall sit at Burn Boot Camp.
Cognitive shuffling is a technique that can help some people to fall asleep faster. So what is it? It's a technique where you find random words that you just say to yourself at night. So it could be socks, lights, camera, shoes. You could also do it by the category. So you could do different types of animals, sheep, pig, You could also just go for the alphabet. So A, think of as many words with A, then go to B, C, and so on and so forth. And what it really does is it helps to kind of focus your brain almost as if it's a mindfulness exercise, so that you're really not thinking about anything and everything else where your brain might be too busy. So try.
It's like the sheep jumping over the, what was it? And like when you were kids?
Counting sheep.
Counting sheep.
Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
the moon.
Yeah. Well, this definitely works for a wall sit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Takes your mind, just takes your mind off something.
I always ask the person next to me, because I usually I'll try to find somebody that I don't know very well, and I'll build a relationship with them, and I'll be like, hey, we're in a wall sit. Where you come from? Tell me your story. And then let's have somebody tell me their story.
Yeah.
Which seems to do the same thing. Yeah, that's good. I love the fact that we are starting to, like, in the late teens, early 20s, we were throwing around words like mindfulness and mindset, and we weren't really defining what these things were meaning. They were just these buzzwords that everybody was using. Oh, I'm trying to be more mindful, so I'm having a coffee. No, that's not the point, right? The point of mindfulness is one thing and one thing only. It's to recognize when you are living in the past or in the future, and then bring yourself back to the present. And nobody has had more trouble with this than yours truly, because my natural mindset wants to be in the future. My whole life I was growing up in where there was chaos in the present, so to stay happy, you have to cast out into the future. And so, nowadays when like a franchise partner comes up to me and they're like, Devin, what's keeping you up at night? My answer gladly and proudly is absolutely nothing. But 10 years ago, old DK was in bed worrying about what this person or that person thinks, or like replaying, like I said, the interactions that were negative that happened throughout the day, and realizing that there is no sense in worrying about the approval of other people because it was out of my control. And around like when we opened like 100 gyms was about the time in which I stared myself in the mirror, and I'm constantly up at night. I'm constantly worried about what people are thinking. I'm constantly worried whether franchise partners are happy, right? Like I exist, Morgan and I exist, you exist to serve them in a professional capacity. And when you can look in your mirror with 100% honesty and say like, hey, you're doing the right things. You're leading with core values. You're making the right decisions. Even if it's the wrong outcome, you made decisions with the pure intent of the people that you're serving, and you're trying to do the right thing. And it doesn't make you better nor worse to approve of yourself, right? Like you could improve of yourself if you rob a bank, or you could approve of yourself if you are CEO of a company. It's not virtuous. It doesn't make you good or bad, but what it does do is make you approve of yourself and not need anybody else's approval in order to live a fulfilled life, right? And so I'm not giving my power away to anybody else to point and judge me, to tell me whether I'm good or bad. I get to look at myself in the mirror and say, am I doing the right things? Am I virtuous? Am I fair? Am I equitable? Am I making decisions with the pure intent at heart? And once you can get approval from yourself, you no longer need approval from other people. You make decisions free and clear, and you're not worried. You're not bogged down with worry or frustration or anger in the moment, because at the end of the day, it's just you, yourself, that mirror, and God out here directing your decisions on a daily basis, and you're getting feedback from the outside world to be a better person, and not living out somebody's ideal version of who you are, because that's when your power is robbed. Any reactions to any of that before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the last article we have today, and then we're going to, we got 2 new locations. We're going to announce a quick member question, and then we are going to get on with our day, get you all out of here. Hopefully you're having a great time. Send this podcast out to a friend, a burn sister, a burn brother that you worked out with today at the gym. Share this and make sure that they know the Burn Bootcamp podcast is here for them every week, breaking it down. Okay, psychology expert shares 8 signs that you are you guys ready for this one? Yeah. An ambivert. What the heck is an ambivert? And why could be the most successful personality type. Interesting. We like to, you know what Chelsea's done a great job at? She's bringing like things that keep it light. We're not so serious all the time. I want to play this. We're gonna watch this Frank James video, because it's like some creator, and it's a super silly video, but it's lighthearted. It's funny. I like humor. Somebody told me, Devin, you seem so serious on the internet sometimes. aren't you more funny? You seem more funny in person. I'm like, I am funny in person. We're gonna be more fun. Okay, so we're gonna roll Frank James YouTube video talking about being this new thing I learned called the ambivert.
We're ambiverts. Of course, at a party, you might find us at the center of everything, talking to everyone. Or you might not find us at all, because we're hiding in the bathroom. We're ambiverts. Of course we're not introverts. Of course we're not extroverts. Does that just make us normal? Because I don't feel normal. We're ambiverts. Of course you don't hear much about us because we're like the forgotten middle children between introverts and extroverts. We're ambiverts. Of course when we get home from hanging out with you, we're not sure if we talked too much or if we talked too little. Either way, it's probably something we should be embarrassed about. We're ambiverts. Of course you could call us introverted extroverts or even extroverted introverts, but either way, when you use those words together, they kind of don't mean anything. We're ambiverts. Of course, we're perfectly boring as all things should be. I meant to say balanced. That was a Freudian slip. We're ambiverts. Of course, whenever we take a personality test, it comes back inconclusive. Are we Parmesan? Are we pineapple? We may just never know what pizza topping best represents our personality. We're ambiverts. Of course, if we stay in, we'll regret not going out. But if we go out, we'll regret not staying in. Basically, wherever we are, we kind of just wish we were somewhere else. We're ambiverts. Of course, around introverts, we feel like extroverts, and around extroverts, we feel like introverts. But around everybody, I feel insecure. But that might just be me as an individual. I'm not sure.
Oh, that made I don't know about you, but that made me laugh. I like corny stuff like that. Does that make you guys laugh, or you're like,
Yeah,
dude,
it's
what
funny.
are you showing us right now?
No, I laughed.
Did you know what an ambivert was, Trisha, before we had this article pop up in our rotation?
No, I do feel like because I really am interested in introverts and extroverts because I feel like I'm an introvert, but I can be an extrovert. If
Are you an ambivert then? What do you
so
say?
I'm like, oh, Morgan, here you go.
Yeah.
I'm more successful because I'm an ambivert. No, I don't know if that was the exact term, but I do find it interesting. I also think anyone could probably fall into this category at some point, depending on the situation that they're in. But that was just my take on it.
Morgan, you're still you're a tried and true introvert.
Am I?
For sure. Yeah, you're very good at speaking in public. You're very good. Like, you can turn it on. And it's natural for you to turn it on, but it's not natural for you to like sustain that on button for a prolonged period of time. But if it's sitting back and it's like that energy button is like just the grind, the day to day, the execution of just a complex set of stuff, your energy level there is like incredible, like better than any, like you can just plow through things and get to outcomes.
Well, I think, you can show up in different spaces as an introvert or an extrovert. So for me, like social spaces, am more of an introvert. You're energized by people. I'm not energized by people. I mean that in the nicest way. If you're around me, I love you. But like my social battery drains a lot quicker than like my work battery or my parenting battery.
You like meaningful interactions. That's what I've noticed about you. Like,
yeah, I do.
I like to shoot the shit just to shoot the shit.
I hate networking events. Truly. I mean,
Same.
We're getting ready to go to a conference and I'm like, so what do I have to go to? No. I mean, I like meeting good people. It's just that setting. It just feels very forced. I don't like forced conversations. I don't like small talk.
Well, you might be an ambivert. You know why?
Okay.
Because, although I think you're still an introvert, but you might be an ambivert. I don't know what I am too. I want to hear your opinion. Because number one, literally, is what you're talking about. You are very selective when it comes to social engagements. You don't seek interaction just for the sake of it. You carefully evaluate which opportunities align with your goals, values, and energy levels. This allows you to be fully present and able to contribute in every interaction.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Is that
for
you?
me. Yes.
All right, you're 1 for 1 on the ambivert scale. You want to go for number 2?
Sure.
You turn solitude into a superpower. When you're alone, you GSD. When you're alone, you don't take time to relax. When you're alone, nobody's watching.
That's truth.
You get after it.
Yes.
Is that true?
I think sometimes. 90%
Okay.
of the
Number
time.
3, you are fluent in speaking introvert and extrovert. You're highly adaptable and skilled at your approach to match the other person's energy or preferences. Highly skilled, yes or no?
I think so.
Number 3, ding. Number 4, you can take the lead, but you also know when to step back. You excel at commanding attention, but you also know when to let others shine. You pivot effortlessly between leading and listening during group discussions. Yes
I would
or no?
have to say I've gotten a lot better and as a leader. Yes.
Morgan's-
Trish,
Morgan-
can you
I agree with
validate
that,
that?
Morgan's feeling herself. 4 for 4. You feel
It's just his label. It's not,
you're feeling yourself. Did you see
not
the
bad or
headline? You
good.
see the headline? They're underrated and more successful than introverts and
Oh,
extroverts.
okay. All right.
Okay. I'm just gassing you up right now. Not gaslighting, Trish, from our last episode. I'm not gaslighting you. I'm gassing you up. This is from the last episode, everybody. You got to go back. You got to be a listener if you want to hang with us. We're kind of episodic. We like to weave and stuff. Number 5, you speak to make progress, not noise. You hate signal, and you love the signal. You love the outcome. You hate the static. You hate the noise.
Yeah, I think this is true.
100% from what I know about Morgan.
Yeah.
You think this is true?
Yeah.
Well, you're making me feel cocky over here, so I'm like, I think so, yeah.
No, cocky is only arrogant if it's not true. It's called confidence when it's true, not cockiness. Cockiness is something that you say that you are that you're actually not. Like, I'm the greatest of all time. Oh, wait, really? Okay. Who's the greatest? How are we judging this game? You act with intention and perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Perfect is not a thing.
Okay.
so.
We're going to give you 5
I
for
think
6 on that one.
overall I'm winning this.
7 and 8. You can turn boring interactions into opportunities, yes or no?
I don't know.
When faced with a boring or
I'm not an
irrelevant
exciting
meeting or
person.
conversation, you don't just zone out. Instead, you scan the room, identify interesting people, and you bring the conversation
Yeah, or
back
I,
to something that's
or
engaged.
I leave and I don't go. I don't
All
go
right.
to events like
We're
that.
going to give you 5 for 7. You are a versatile problem solver.
Yes.
6 for 8. You're pretty much an ambivert.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Well, this is a new label for me, so I've got to learn more about it. But I think I show up differently depending on who I'm around, because that's just life. You wear a lot of hats.
So this, by the way, just in case anybody is wondering, an ambivert is a colloquial term. It is not a scientific term. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, determines what is like true psychology terminology, like what's formal, diagnostic versus what is not. And this is just a layman's term, as a lot of people use that. It's a layman's term, ambivert. It's trying to, like the gentleman Frank said in the video, an extrovert and an introvert, or an introverted extrovert, is really just nothing, right? So an ambivert is like a way to say, Carl Jung started this, psychoanalytical therapist, said that an ambivert is that middle ground, where you're like a chameleon, which comes from the history of it. Let me read this. The history comes from, started by Carl Jung's work on introversion and extroversion. So if you are somebody who's really into psychology and you want to take your life to the next level, Carl Jung is a fantastic person to read and to study. I highly, highly, highly recommend, because when you educate yourself, you get the ultimate knowledge and the potential to execute on top of it, only if you have it. Isaac is a well-known psychologist that brought this idea before Jung, or after Jung, and then Adam Grant most recently, which we've studied from. He's alive and well today. In 2013, University of Pennsylvania researcher said that most people fall in the middle, and there's a term called the ambivert advantage that he coined. So this goes way back. It's not anything new, and there's a new door open in the world of psychology for you guys today. An ambivert. What are you? An introvert, an extrovert, or an ambivert? You're no longer allowed to say an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, because that means nothing. That's the call to action.
All right.
In the meanwhile, guys, we have 2 new locations coming to you, Burn Nation. They're open. They're rocking right now. Number 425. That is Britt and Eric at Morgantown, West Virginia, and Jennifer and Jean Benner in Georgetown, Texas. Number 425 and 426. A new state in the state of West Virginia. And if you are out there traveling for work, Burn Nation, make sure that you know there is some new locations. Or if you're traveling for vacation, or if you're moving. I know many of you make the decision to move into a new home or to a new community based on proximity to a burn boot camp. I hear that's a thing, and that's super cool. So there's 2 new locations for you to consider if you happen to be moving. All right. If you'd like to become a franchise partner, if you want to cue this graphic up here, we are much more than a gym. You all know that. That's why we're here doing this podcast in the first place. If you want to become a business partner with Morgan, myself, Trisha, our leadership team, Jen and Jean, Eric and Britt. There's a QR code right here on your screen. You can go ahead and, if you're watching this on the computer, go ahead and take your phone out and scan that QR code. Take a screenshot of it if you have to. Scan it with another phone. But there's the QR code. You can also just Google franchise Burn Bootcamp. You'll find your way to our franchise development site at Burn Bootcamp. All right, and we will be there waiting for you. Let's get after it. Okay, we have a member question, guys. We're going to finish up on a member question. And, then I think we're going to go ahead and get on out of here. How's that sound to you all?
Sounds good.
All right, member question comes from Ben, Lake Norman. Ben wants to know our personal routines. All right, he says, Devin, Morgan, Trisha, what's your favorite Burn Nutrition product and how is it incorporated into your routine? I'll go last. Let's go Trisha, Morgan, Devin, and then
So
we'll
we
get out of
only
here.
pick one
There's
product?
no rules
Okay.
to this game. You're just however you want to answer Ben's question. Ben, what is your
Okay.
favorite Burn Nutrition product and how do you use it?
My favorite right now, as we speak on this podcast today, is Replenish.
You say that with so many caveats. Does it change that often?
Yeah.
Like
Because we have great products. So,
it changes. Yeah, it changes for you.
I
Whatever
have
season you're in.
staples.
Okay.
Replenish, I love because I love that my kids can have it. My son asks for it every night. It just feels good to make products that your kids want to consume. So I would, and I have it in my water every day. So Replenish is number one. Number two is our chocolate plant protein. I have one of those in my smoothies with creatine in that. And then I would say I'm not every day. I don't have a protein bar every day. So my dailies are creatine, protein, Replenish, collagen in my coffee. I don't think I'm missing anything.
No, you did that.
I don't do pre-workout every day,
that's
and I
pretty
don't
good.
do protein bars every day.
You know what? And we appreciate that you are telling us actually what you do.
Yeah.
Most people that created the products would be like, I take every one of them every day, and this one this time. Oh, I do 3 of these, and you should do just like I do. Right? No.
Yeah.
You're just such a real human. I love you for that. Appreciate you. Okay.
Trish, what's yours?
Yeah, so I think, our nutrition products, they solve a problem for me. So I don't know if I have a favorite one because they all are, I take them for a specific reason. So I wake up every morning and have my collagen is in my coffee creamer every single morning. I also take that for, obviously, my bone health and the added protein. There's 9 grams of protein, in case you didn't know that, in our collagen. And then I also do creatine. It's most times, I know I do sometimes accidentally forget to take it, but I usually take it after my workout. It's that's how I take it, with some water. And then I love our Afterburn bars. The peanut butter cup Afterburn bar is one of my favorite things we've ever created. It's like a little sweet treat for me in the afternoon. And then I also recently started using the Vanilla Whey, which I've never been a vanilla protein powder person. But I actually, if you haven't tried it, which was the first time I tried ours, it's actually really, really good. So I've been on the Vanilla Whey game lately.
All right. Yeah. It tastes like cupcakes, doesn't it?
It tastes really good.
I need to try it. I've obviously tried it because I approve all of our products, but I don't use it every day. So
Yeah.
you're making me want to try it.
We just
again.
had a long battle of protein wars that took place.
Did
across
Vanilla win?
Burn
Or did it
Nation.
depend on the
Well,
location?
chocolate. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat chocolate.
It's just such a miracle product. Okay, so let's see, guys. What is my supplement routine for the day? Okay, I'll break it up into 2 times, AM and PM. I'm not trying to pop supplements and set an alarm clock on my phone to take stuff like 12 and 2 and 4. We ain't got no time for that. So what I do is I try to load it all up in the morning and get all my stuff in the morning, and then have another time in the PM. So when I wake up in the morning, it's usually 2 scoops of Afterburn Whey. It'll be 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla. I'll put them both together. 2 scoops of chocolate or vanilla if I run out of either one, which happens quite often. I need to solve for that, but it happens often. Usually 1 scoop of creatine, 5+ milligrams. I'll do a heaping scoop of creatine. 1 scoop of collagen, which is, our collagen's right here. Bovine collagen, by the way, which is great for your connective tissue and your ligaments and your joints. It's a different type of protein. And then Shaklee Vitalizer for 1 strip, 8-ounce glass of Suja, Uber Greens, and that's, and then I'll go work out in the AM when I work out. It will be mostly in the morning, sometimes in the evening. 1 scoop of Ignite, maybe 2 or 3, depends on how I'm feeling that day. And then I'm a water all day long. And then in the PM, 1 scoop of probably like an Afterburn vanilla plant. I'll do another like single protein shake. So I'm doing 3 scoops of protein on a daily basis, which really helps me hit my protein goals and makes it very, very easy. And then 2 servings of like replenishing my water in the evening. I fill up a glass jar at home and I basically just put 2 scoops of replenish in like 64 ounces of water. And then I'm just constantly refilling that. And most of that's consumed in the evening based on my schedule. So all the things that I just said right there, you should do absolutely none of them exactly the way I do them. You should take my advice and you should look at my regimen, and then you should say, okay, now based on my schedule, my lifestyle, what my goals are, my whole food nutrition, what do I need? What do I actually need? And I'll give you an example. Like I have 8 ounces of Suja every day because I don't typically eat enough greens, right? And I'll take my Shaklee vitamins religiously because I typically don't eat enough greens. I'll have a serving or 2 when they're made for me, but I'm not like trying to seek out steamed broccoli or anything like that. I'm eating like rice and beef and chicken and basically a lot of like carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, things like that. Okay, so that's why I have 8 ounces of Suja in there, and you might not need to do that if you love yourself some broccoli or some salad. All right, I think that's good for today, everybody. We appreciate you guys being here this morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you're at in the world, and we'd like you to email us in at podcast@burnbootcamp.com if you'd like to ask a question, be featured on the podcast, or if you'd like to review. Please do, because that makes Trisha Morgan and I very, very happy, and we know that you partly exist to make us happy. So please scoot over there to Apple, especially YouTube, Spotify, anywhere really. Give us a review. We appreciate you guys. Love you guys. We're going to take you out of here like we always do. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2. See ya.
Bye, guys.